Hi, and welcome to our section on Google Data Studio, which is a very cool business intelligence software. Well, it's actually a cloud-based software like many of the others. However, Google Data Studio is exclusively cloud-based, while very popular business intelligence tools such as Tableau, which is one of the most popular ones, and Power BI by Microsoft both offer offline versions. However, Google Data Studio is one of the newest and one of the most quickly improving business intelligence tools that allow you to do some very cool and impressive and informative dashboards. So at this point in the course, you would have finished pretty much all of the pandas, statistics, probabilities, charting functions in Python. So you have a very good idea of what you can do with data and represent it using Python and pandas in those libraries. However, if you wanted to make a very cool interactive web-based tool that can be shared amongst many in your organization, Google Data Studio is actually perfect for it. But before we delve into Google Data Studio, I want to give you a quick tour of what Tableau and Power BI offer and why I'm teaching Google Data Studio in this course and not one of these other very popular business intelligence tools. So starting with Tableau, Tableau is actually one of the first tools I used for intelligence, and it's actually a very cool tool. However, part of the problem with Tableau is that it has so many features and so many intricate behaviors that it sometimes can be a bit overwhelming for a beginner, and it does require some extensive courses. There are actually very good courses on Udemy by a couple of the other instructors on Tableau, and they pretty much show you all the things you can do. But from my experience, you can do almost everything in Google Data Studio, and it's actually quite easy to do in Google Data Studio. Once you spend an hour or two with the interface, you get quite used to it. But bear in mind, learning Google Data Studio has a big advantage over learning Tableau in the beginning, in that skills you learn in Google Data Studio are very easily adapted to Tableau. I found Tableau to have a bit of a learning curve, while Google Data Studio was much easier to get into, in my opinion. But Tableau is definitely perhaps the most popular business intelligence tool out there, followed by Power BI, which is designed by Microsoft, which is also growing rapidly, and it is quite cool too. Actually, I worked in a couple of organizations that use this exclusively, and you can do almost anything in Power BI. However, just like Microsoft tools like Excel and the others, they work best when you're basically embedded in the Microsoft environment, and there is a little bit of a learning curve too as well, so bear that in mind. But Power BI is a very good tool that I highly recommend. Now back to Google Data Studio, and let's take a quick tour on the Google Data Studio website, which is oddly found at marketingplatform.google, and then it's about Data Studio here. You can see some of the impressive dashboards you can build here. It can be displayed on tablets or mobile devices. You can see you can do a lot of maps, charts. You can basically pull data from a lot of different sources, not just these here. There are actually many other integrations, which you'll see shortly. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically get a gallery view here and show you some pretty cool dashboards you can build. So let's take a look at this one, and let's look at this one as well. And before we actually go on to the others, let's just quickly load this up. You can see some very cool dashboards here with a lot of interactivity going on in charts. You can actually get values off of it. You can filter on dates here. And let's take a look at the other one. This is a world map one, which is actually very nice. World population map. You can see these nice graphs, these nice charts. You can sort the charts if you wanted. You can basically do a lot of other things here with interactivity. This report doesn't have too much built in, but it's quite decent as well. And this is the report we're going to be building in this lesson, in this course. This here is our executive sales dashboard. We're going to build a lot of these little unique scorecards here that give you profit comparisons to the previous week revenue, how many unique customers per week, if it's up or down compared to the previous week, a little breakdown of countries and our charts here, some graphs that show you basically month-to-month profits, all of this cool stuff, quarterly sales, cumulative sales, and comparisons to how we did the month before, the week before. So this is actually pretty cool. So we're going to be doing this at the end of this, at the end of our 1 hour or 2 hour tutorial in Google Data Studio, and you get to build this, and you get to build a couple other dashboards, so stay tuned. And the next chapter, actually, where we'll be creating our first very simple little dashboard block here using Google Data Studio. So let's get to it. Okay, so welcome to Google Data Studio, our first introductory chapter, and you may have noticed you're on your Google Drive folder. So why am I here? You're here because in order to bring data to Google Data Studio, before we even get to it, we have to work with a file. From Google Data Studio, you can pull files from many different sources. However, we're going to pull a file from a Google Drive right now. So log into your Google account, go to your Google Drive, with your icon will be here when you click on this, and bring this up here. You'll see this nice clean interface here, and what you do, you download the retail sales data file section here on the right hand side. You'll see it quickly, and now what you do is you find that file and then you upload it here. So you just go to File, Upload. Let's go to Desktop where I saved the file, and go to Retail Sales Data, and you notice it's an Excel file. That's what we're working with, and it brings it into Google Data Studio here. Google Drive. Now we're not finished yet, so what you have to do, you basically have to convert this into a Google Sheets file. So you double click on it and you open with Google Sheets here. So this brings it up in Google Sheets now. So what to do here, you're working with an Excel file in Google Data Sheets here. So wait for it to finish load. And when it's finished loading, I want you to click on File here. It brings up this menu, and you'll see this close to the top says Save as Google Sheets here. Click that, and it opens a file in a new window. However, what it does here, it's in the Google Sheet form right now. So again, just wait for it to finish working, and there we go. So that's pretty much it. And basically, all we did is just convert an Excel file to Google Sheet file, which we'll now bring into Google Data Studio. So now let's take a look and explore this file before we open it in our first dashboard project. This is basically a retail sales data set here that I basically modified slightly for this course. We have our invoice number, we have our stock code for the item that was sold, how much of the item that was sold, the date it was actually sold, the unit price of the item, and the profit, and the customer ID. So you can take a look at this row here. You can see this customer, same customer, on the same, or sorry, on different invoice, but different purchases, had purchased different items here. Hand warmers set of, let's open this, babushka nesting boxes. I wish I knew what that was, but probably something. Shouldn't really comment on what I think it is. But you can see this is standard invoice data. This is like point of sale data generated, or from an e-commerce website. You can export CSVs that have similar data like this. If you ever wanted to modify it to get it exactly like this, it can easily be done using all your pandas skills that I assume you have right now. So now we've done enough exploring of this file. We're going to explore it more in our Google Data Studio. Just one thing I want to show you is that the date range here is from the 1st of December 2018. We're using the English style, not the American date style. So it's day, month, year. So, and this goes all the way to 2019, December 9th, 2019. Got confused with the date system myself, but this is a UK based data set, so it's going to follow the UK standard of dates. So to get to Google Data Studio now, go to your homepage in Google and just type Google Data Studio. And you can see this is the address here. It's datastudio.google.com. So every time you want to get to Google Data Studio, just go to this address, datastudio.google.com. You can add a shortcut somewhere to your home screen or to your toolbar in Chrome or whatever browser you're using. And now you're ready to load your first report. I already have a first report titled here, but ignore this for now. It's going to be blank on your screen. And what you do is you can start creating your first report from either clicking here or here, which we'll do in the next section. Thank you. So now we're ready to basically start our first dashboard. So now let's click the bigger button here. It seems like Google wants us to go in this direction with their UX and UI design. So let's click it here. And you basically see this new interface here where you have basically the name, and you can rename this file to something. So let's name it my first report. And basically you can see this is on the right hand side here. You can see something that says add data source, and basically just a Google tutorial informative thing that tells you basically first time you have to bring a data source into Google Dashboard, which we know, which is why we uploaded our file here. So what we do here, we're not going to use any of these sample reports here. If you wanted to experiment on them, feel free to do that, but we're going to click this button on the bottom right here that says create new data source. So let's click this now, and here we go. It brings up this big field here where you can see there's a lot of different basically connection types. Google calls it Google connectors to different data sources. You can see we are going to select Google Data Sheets for this project, but let's quickly take a look, and you can see you can bring in data from pretty much any Google popular Google tool here. The Google Analytics and Google Ads are very popular sources of data, and Google actually has templates that you can use to play with this data as well. You can look at Cloud SQL and MySQL, Ad Manager, Storage, Postgres, YouTube statistics, which I actually want to play with this on my own later, see what I can do. But there's so many different sources of connectors here. They're actually adding more and more all the time. From the moment I started to use Google Data Studio, which was months ago, they've added a lot, to be fair. It's like I don't remember even half of these things being here. So this is what makes Google Data Studio a very cool tool. It's constantly being updated weekly with new features and new things and cleaning up the interface. So which can be one bad thing about this course. Some of the things may look differently if you're looking at this maybe a couple months down the line from when this video was created, but it's okay. So, generally you can follow, or you can probably find the same things. If there's something drastically different, just put a note at the bottom of this course and I'll update the video. But for now, let's go to connect our data source from our Google Sheets. So you select there. So now you can see there's some spreadsheets that show up here. So all the items that I have. If you're not sure if it's going to be these sheets, even though they are these sheets, because it's all the data we actually have here, and it found it. Let's open from Google Drive here, and you can actually see the report. So if you just wanted to make sure that was the report you were bringing in, you can select it here. And because there's only one worksheet in our file, we can select the worksheet here and leave these checked here, unless for some reason you had hidden and filtered cells you didn't want to show. And the first row, which means the column data here, let's bring this up so I can just show you. This here is the first row, is a column data. We're going to want to include that here in our report. Basically not include it, it's always included, but basically indicate that it's headers and not part of the actual data itself. And for now, field editing and reports on, everything here is fine. You can now press connect at the top right here. And there we go. So now what's happened is basically you've brought in all the fields of data here. So Google Data Studio has recognized that we have these are the fields here of data, and it brings it up here, and basically it tells you what type of data it thinks it is. It tells you if you want to do any aggregation onto it, which for now you can ignore this because we'll be discussing this in the course in some detail afterward. You don't need to put any descriptions here unless you wanted to. You can probably dismiss these little things unless you want to learn about them for now. And this top bar here, you can leave these as default settings for now since it's just a tutorial project. But if you're doing a commercial or something private, you may want to keep this off, and you may want to change different things. Data freshness, this data source isn't changing, so the freshness doesn't matter. So for anyhow, let's look and see if the types of data here match the type of field we want to have here. And immediately I can tell you two things are wrong. Firstly, customer ID, which is an ID indicator here, even though it is a number, which is right, it doesn't mean anything. These numbers are we're never going to do operations like average, what's the average customer number, because those things make no sense. So we're going to change this to none, even though we're not going to leave it as number. What we're going to do is put it as text, and that's going to change it to none anyhow. So we're going to treat this as a text field for now. And what else is wrong here? Everything else seems to be correct, doesn't it? Well, actually there's two other things that are wrong. And firstly, invoice date is wrong as well, because date, it's a date field. You can see it here. right here. These are dates. Sorry, whoops, I added row. These are date fields here. So immediately let's change that to date time. And so how we did that, let me just show you again. You can just go click on this arrow here, click on date time, and you can see you can put it on any different type of time formatting as you want. So the one we're going to use here is basically standard date here, year, which is, sorry, just year, I shouldn't say year a few times, month, day. So let's do that and press continue. And there we go. So the other thing I'm going to change here is that stock code isn't a number, because stock code has letters in it as well, and we're never going to sum those things as well, just like customer ID. So let's change that to text. Everything else is a number or text, which is correct, and there we go. So we're ready to add this to our report. Don't show me this again because we know what we're doing. Okay, so let's add this to our report, and there we go. So now we have the interface here. So this, as unglamorous as this looks, this is our first dashboard. We're going to do one or two things to this dashboard so that you can actually see you did something pretty cool. What we're going to do is let's change the styling of our dashboard. So you can see if you click on the white panel here, not on this table, on the white panel, you're going to see something come up on the right that says theme and layout. Let's choose a more interesting color theme. You can scroll down and see all the different themes they offer, and you can basically start customizing themes as you go along. Let's choose something quickly at the top. Let's choose this edge dark theme here. So all I did is change the colors and backgrounds here. Nothing too drastic, but it's cooler. And now let's talk about this table that pops up here. All right, so this table basically tells us that we have stock code here, which is our dimension here, and the metric that's being shown here is our record count. So this is a default table that every time you load some data into Google Dashboard connecting, it brings up some sort of default table here that's based on some data here, or our data I should say, not some data. And what you need to know about this table, which confused me a bit, is that it's just a default way of just Google is quickly showing what can be shown. However, what can be shown is never what we actually want to show sometimes. Not a very intelligent tool. It's just a tool to quickly just say what can be done. So let's discuss these things here, and then we're going to do something cool to conclude this lesson. So before we discuss actually what's going on in this bar, I want to make sure this interface doesn't scare you. So this is a very simple interface, like a lot of Windows tools. You can add pages here, you can do undo, redo, we can do a selection mode, we can add charts by pulling that drop down here. We can actually look at community visuals here, which is not something we're going to do in this course, but it has the option here. We can change date range for add filters to change date ranges here. So let's just delete that, don't want to add it just yet. We can add filters, we can do data control, we can embed URLs, images, text. So let's just add some text here, and we can do standard programmer stuff. Hello world is our first program. You can draw lines. I don't know why would you want to draw lines sometimes, maybe just for formatting purposes. And you can draw shapes as well. Don't know why you'd want to draw too many shapes, but there we go. So it's like standard formatting tools. Alright, now this is what I want to show you here. So every time you click a chart object here, it's going to bring up this thing here, this chart table box here. So this chart table box allows us here to change the chart type if you wanted to on the fly instead of adding a new one. We're not going to do that yet, or ever really in this course, because it's going to bring down the charts we want to build. However, Google does give us the flexibility to change this if we wanted to right here. However, the important part I want you to pay attention to is this here, this area right here that has data and style. So immediately you see the top thing here on the top left hand column is data source, and this is data source we loaded initially. So you don't have to overthink this here yet or change anything here yet unless you wanted to. You can blend data, which we'll discuss later on in this course. Data range dimension, which confused me a bit, but what it is basically, it just tells us it basically shows what range of data you wanted to display on your table. Okay, so immediately it looks for a date field by default, and it displays the entire date field here. However, if you wanted to change that, you can actually change dates or change different metrics you wanted to adjust your date range dimension here. Okay, date range dimension is also what you filter on at the bottom here as well on these date ranges sometimes. So you can actually do different things here with this. I don't want this to confuse you yet. The important thing you want to know here is dimension and metric. These two things here, as you scroll down below, you can see dimension is the first column here. Now if you want to add another dimension, you can quickly just add it here. Let's add customer ID, and let's see, our table is going to update in about 5 seconds. You can see it added another column here. So that's pretty cool. We're adding stock codes here, which is null for some reason. Let's remove that and add country instead. So we have these things here. And what's record count? Record count now is basically the metric that we're basically aggregating in a way here. So it's counting the records here for each one. So instead of count, let's remove customer ID for now. And now let's do a record count for each country, which is exactly what we did here. What we did, we're just basically summing how many purchases or how many invoice lines in our data are from the UK. So let's change something. Let's change this to let's see, instead of counting items, let's count how many individual customers were from each country. So now before we conclude this lesson, what I want to show you is just two quick things. So now you see you actually added customer ID here, and it gave you the customer count right here. Now what if we wanted to actually rename this field to say unique customer ID? And how do you know if it even is unique customer ID? Suppose this is just number of customers, but we don't actually know if they're unique customers. Well, there are two things you can check before moving on. Every time you have a metric here, you see this number right here next to the field name here. This number tells you basically the type of aggregation it's being done on the metric here. If you wanted to do no aggregation, you could have done it with just count here as well, and in a way it's actually aggregation. I shouldn't say it's no aggregation, but what it's doing is changing type of aggregation here from count to count distinct, and it does it in live right here. You can see it happening right now. So this is pretty cool, and you can actually change this data type if you want to change it to money, which is not money, but if you wanted to, you had the option to add like things like percentages and that kind of stuff here, or seconds, time data. And more importantly though, you can add a name here. So let's call this unique customer, whoops, hit caps lock, customer type, oh sorry, unique customers instead of customer count. You can actually call it customer count for short. Okay, and there we go, and you change this to count distinct, and count distinct basically gives you all the unique customer IDs from each country. So you can clearly see here that we have tons of customers from the UK, so this is clearly a UK based store, followed by not much from Germany, France, and the rest of the European countries here. So that's it for this, our first basic dashboard report, which is pretty much a little bit underwhelming if you're expecting something fancy, but don't worry, you can quickly get up to fancy reports very soon. What I wanted to teach you in this lesson was basically how to use the dimensions and metrics of the tables, and later on in this lesson, in this section, you'll be moving on to pivot tables, more advanced table formatting. You can do a lot of cool stuff with tables here, so stay tuned, and let's go on to the next lesson where we start adding more stuff to tables and formatting it differently. Thanks. Okay, so let's admit that this table, while informative, it wasn't very cool. Okay, so let's just move it aside a bit and let's make it a little smaller because it doesn't need to be too wide. Just keep the customer count there. And now let's remove all of the stuff we were playing with, and now let's make a much cooler and more informative table. So to do this, let's go to add a chart, and now we're going to add table with bars. So let's drop this in here and let's take a look at what this actually is. And you can quickly see what table with bars mean when it loads our default data here. You can see that what's happening here is that we have basically stock code, which we have a lot of null stock codes here. That's going to be the highest data count here. And what we're going to do we're going to quickly do something awesome, which is we're going to see our customers to see which is probably our most important or highest purchasing customer, and we can see some other stats on it. Okay, so let's quickly see how we can get like the profitability per customer, how many purchases they've made, the average purchase size, and represented in a nice visual table here. So to do this, let's firstly change the main dimension we're looking at here from stock code to customer ID. So let's change that here, and immediately you'll get a customer ID, which should look a bit familiar, and the record counts here. What we're going to do now though is that we're going to change this record count here to profit. So let's add profit right here, and basically this is going to give you a sum, and this tells you the most profitable customer is customer 14911, is customer ID. If you wanted to add his name, we would have to have a data set where we can match this name to a customer ID. However, we don't have it in this data set, but that's fine. And we're going to add a couple more fields here. So now, firstly, what I think you should know is what bars are. Bars basically represent the magnitude of this customer. And let's do something. Let's add profit again. And what we're going to do, we're going to add an actual value here. So let's click on style, and from styling tables you can change so many things that it's a lot to go through, honestly. But I can just quickly show you can change things like how you wrap the header, the text, the font size of the headers. You can see it increase there. You can change the font type. We can change the colors. Like if you wanted to change, let's see what we can change. This is which one? Header background color. So let's change our header background color to something a little lighter. It's a bit too light for my taste. Let's go with this. So that's a bit better. You can change the cell border color, which I'm fine with. Odd row color. You can change all these things to make some very cool, nice visuals. I think the default one in this theme is quite nice, as you can see. But it's fine. Okay, we can change a bunch of things here. What I actually want to change though is, as you can see, you can scroll down. I want to actually put the values of profit here, and we can use the bars to represent the magnitude here, so you can get a nice visual display. That's how you basically represent the data a lot. You want to have magnitude and some sort of visual indication so people can quickly grasp the magnitude of what differences may exist here. So you can quickly see in metrics, column 1, this is the metrics column here. When you scroll all the way down after dimensions here, and dimensions should just allow you to center or left things here, left align. For those of you who have OCD like I do, who want to make sure things line up, you can actually change it here like that. I'm fine with either. Actually, center is better, to be fair. Let's now change this to number, so you can actually see here. However, it's missing something, isn't it? Let's put heat map. There we go. So now we have 2 representations. It might be a bit overkill, but it looks cool. And now let's do something. These numbers, they don't look clean because of the decimal points, and we can always change that to like the different decimal points here. However, I like this thing called compact numbers. It doesn't actually make it that compact here, but it actually is. Usually you should take this off in most cases. And now these bars, I'm okay with these bars with this color. For now, let's keep it at that. Let's just change the column width here so these bars can look a bit longer. And now that's it for style. We're changing. One thing you can change is like a hover color, and let me show you what this means. Hovering, you can see nothing happens when we hover over this here. So what's that hovering thing about? Let's change it to, well, let's actually show you what it is. This here is our edit mode in our Google dashboard. This is how we change things. When you're sharing it and someone is viewing it, they see it on view mode. And in view mode, you can see we can have hovering, and you can have interactions here where you can scroll down. You can go through different tables here. Different number of accounts here. So you can see all of these things. Let's go back to this, and this here 1 to 100. You can change this to 1 to 10 if you wanted to. Likewise, we have it in this table here. So this is what the end users see, and this is what you see when you're building it. Okay. So now let's add a couple more things, and you can actually see how you actually do different aggregations with metrics. So you can see we have profit twice here. Now let's do something. Let's add average profit. So how do we do that? So to do that, let's add profit here. Again, quite simple. However, to change the average profit per purchase from each customer, let's change this sum here to average. And you can actually change it to count, max, median, standard deviation, variance, whatever you wanted to see, you can change it there as well. So it's quite powerful as well. Let's scroll along a bit so we can see a bit more. And let's put this to, let's say 20 per page. Okay. And now, did I set this? No, I did not set this. So it's set now. And let's bring it out a bit. Let's raise it so we can actually see all 20. We don't actually need to do this, but so this might be nice for illustrative purposes. Alright, good. So we have a nice table, very nice looking table here. What else can we add? Now, let's add number of purchases each customer made. So let's just shrink this a bit so we can accommodate that. And go to add metric again. And what we want to add the number of invoices here. Alright. However, we want to add distinct invoices, which should actually be the same because invoices would be fine. And there we go. Sorry, let's go back to this here. And for invoice, sum is fine because sum or even count will give you the exact same thing, because invoice is basically a number, text type data. So you can actually see now how many invoices, each purchases a customer made on it right here. So you can see this customer made quite a bit. Profit was a lot. This actually should not be profit here. Something I forgot to show you. When we actually, my bad. Let's change this title here. This is confusing and I made a mistake, and it's good to see these mistakes because I don't want this average. I want to call this average profit here. There we go. So now we can actually see that this is average profit we're looking at, and we can shrink this bar a bit so you can see the average profit word, and we can see invoice number. Let's change invoice number as well to number of purchases. Okay, now there we go. So that is a very cool table, and it's a very informative table for like doing some customer analytics off the top of your head. You can quickly see who your best customers are and their purchasing behavior. You can see a guy like this, 17,500. He makes his average profit per purchase is high. He doesn't make much purchases, and those small amount of purchases accounted for a lot of profit from him still. So you can basically get a general idea of who your best customers are. Number of purchases here, to be fair, this should actually, I would like if this was an actual figure as well. So now what we can do, we can just add a metric here, and we can just do invoice as well, invoice number, and we can do a count on this as well. But you can see it's the exact same data. Now, how do we get a count again? Let's just go to it here. This is going to be metric number 4, I believe. Metric number 5 actually. And let's change this to a heat map. Nice. So now we can actually see how many purchases these customers made. So you can see this guy better analyzed. You can see it wasn't few purchases, it was actually just one single purchase he made. That's why his profit is so high comparatively to the others. He must have bought some big ticket items from us. Okay, so this is a very cool little dashboard here. We can see our customer analytic dashboard. What we're going to do in the next chapter, next section as well, is do some pivot tables as well. And then afterward, we're going to do some scorecards and a bunch of other graphs and visualizations. So stay tuned. We're going to have a lot of fun using Google Data Studio. Now, before we move on to pivot tables, because as you can see, we've done some nice table editing here. Right now, we understand how we can add metrics. We can add different dimensions to it. We can do a few different things. What I want to show you doing now is how to create a new field in your table or a new field in your data set. So there's two ways you can do it. You can actually see there's a button fit here, create new field. So let's add a new field here that gives us the total profit per sale. So as you can see in our data set here, in our sheet, we have the invoice, we have how many of the item was purchased, we have a unit price and profit, but we don't actually have total profit or even total sale price. So in fact, let's add both of those fields here. So let's call this one total sale first, and that's going to be quite simply the quantity of the item multiplied by the sale unit price. So if we save that here, we've just added a new field to our data. So let's click that, and if you click on this data source here, sorry, not this here, click on, my bad, the edit data source here, you can actually see we have total sale right here. This is pretty cool, and total sale is numbered, just everything is correct, so that's nice. So let's see what we can, let's add another field again, and you can also add fields here, and it's going to bring up the same thing here. Let's get total profit, and that's total profit per sale, which is going to be profit multiplied by quantity. And wait for it to complete. It's done, and we save this, and it's done here. So now we can actually go back to our data source, and now you can see we have those two new columns of data, new fields of data we created here. So this is actually quite cool. So why did I do that for? Well, only because I want to show you that you actually can use these things here to add. So let's add another metric here. Let's add total profit to our column, and now this gives us here the sum, not even average, the sum of the total profit we basically inherited from our customers here. So this is again drilling down further into the analytics of this. What a good business data analyst does, represents data in many different ways, but also you need to make a conclusion. You don't want to present too much data here. So what an executive is going to ask you to do is basically come up with a way to figure out who our best customers are, and that's not a trivial thing. Our best customers can be measured in many metrics, but according to the business or type of business, you're going to want to find who your best customer is based on that criteria. For our business like this, we can say our best customers would probably be the guys who have provided our business with the most profit. So maybe this guy as well here, his total profit was quite high, and basically you can actually see he could be the most valuable to our business. So, and remember that this is different to this, because this profit here, which is summing the profit, basically, like if you just were to sort, let's actually do some analytics here too. Let's create a filter here, and now let's just pick a random customer here. Let's clear all and just select this guy here, and good, he's bought 2 items here. So this profit here is basically the sum of these two. That is actually not informative at all, because he bought 12 of this item and 2 of this item. So in actual reality, this item was actually more profitable in a way for this customer, and it's not reflected. That is not reflected in this column here, because this column would have just summed these 2 points to give you the profit here. So that's what a good business data analyst does. He actually figures out what is relevant to present. So actually, let's remove that column, these 2 columns here, because profit is kind of irrelevant here. Average profit is even more relevant too. Is delete the previous profits that were used here, and let's add in total profit again, and now let's use one as an average as well, and here we go. Okay, so you can see average total profit is actually quite small. This actually is not very easy to filter to see any different discrepancy here, so it's probably irrelevant or not going to be useful to put it here. However, let's just shrink this a bit in a way. However, let's see, let's sort on this here. So now let's sort, instead of an invoice number, which for some reason we were sorting on that before, let's sort on the average profit here. So now, yes, you can see you can change how you sorted that data. You can actually see the total profit here, and actually again, this is bad because we didn't actually call it average profit, so it's not going to be that informative to someone who's seeing it for the first time. It's going to confuse them. So you can see the average profit column there, how it is. So you can see this customer's average profit per purchase was significantly more than everyone else. So you can do some nice variations like this here to our data set. Okay, so this is a lesson on adding fields to your data, adding new fields or more relevant fields. Now before we move on to pivot tables, let's learn to add date fields to our data. Okay, I'm going to create some more date fields here, so let's stay tuned. So now, as you can see, we have a problem right here where the UK, the sales from the UK are so much more than the other countries. I can't actually visualize these bars quite well. You can see differences like whether this bar is bigger than this bar. So how do we fix that? And what we have to do, Google Data Studio allows us to create some very cool filters for pivot tables or any other table actually. This can be applied to any other chart. However, we're introducing it here in our pivot table. So let's add a filter right here. So let's, just so you see that again, let's at the bottom, when you click this table, at the bottom right here, all the way down, you'll see a button that says add filter. So let's add a filter here. So let's call this filter no UK. And what it does, basically, our data source is our table, our initial table. Let's select a field here, which is going to be country. And we're going to exclude it, and we're going to be if it contains United Kingdom. So there we go. So by doing this here, bang, damn, that is it. UK has been removed from here, from this table. And every time you want to use a filter, now Google Data Studio has conveniently added this filter here. So if you were to add another filter, you can select from different filter pickers here, which is going to be quite convenient. So this is how we created a very cool pivot table here for our countries and per quarter as well. And as you remembered, we actually did create one that was year month field. Just looking for it right now. Where is it? Did we even create it? No, we didn't create it here. Sorry, is missing. Let's just create a new field called year month. I know we did it in the last chapter, but I think I removed it accidentally before starting this one. So let's just create this here. Call this year month. Getting a double lesson in this section. And there we go. So we've done. And now let's remove quarter and add. You can drag it from here, year month, onto it here. So it's going to reload from this representation, and there we go. So now we have our monthly reports here showing how different countries change month to month, which is a bit more granular than we were looking at it per quarter before. So this is pretty cool. So this concludes our lesson on basically adding filters and doing some cool stuff with pivot tables. Alright, stay tuned for the next lesson where we take on scorecards, which are actually quite useful and very easy to use. Okay, so let's get started with some scorecards. So firstly, let's create a new page that we'll be working on. And now go to add a chart. And from there, you're going to see, you've seen a lot of these things before. The one we're going to play with in this lesson is scorecards. And scorecards are very informative because they allow us to basically give large figures of describing different quantities we want to check. So in our case, it's giving firstly the default one, which is record count, which is we have these number of records in our data set. Let's change this though to something a bit more informative. Alright, so to do this, what we do, we basically have the same date range you've seen in our tables and previous lessons. So what we're going to do now is go to metric, and we're going to change metric here to, let's do the number of purchases we've created that we have in our data set. So our number of purchases to date. So to do this, let's create a new field, and let's call this let's give a shorter name, number of purchases. And what we're going to do, we're going to do a count distinct. Oops, let's scroll down to count distinct, and we're going to do it to let's do invoice number. All right, and let's wait for it and apply this now. And there we go, it's going to change to number of purchases. So we can just, with scorecards, you can actually move them around like this, get them where you want to. You can just expand the size here if the text doesn't fit, and luckily you can actually change the color to whatever you want. You can do, firstly you can do compact numbers, which give it 9.5k, which is quite nice. You can change the decimal points to, let's say, 2. Alright, you don't actually need to do this. It was fine the way it was before with 1 decimal point. And you can actually, if you have no missing data, you can put it to no data if you had, or change these options through different things according to what you want. We don't have any missing data in our number of purchases field, so that's okay. What I wanted to show you is basically you can do things like centering these things here if it's aesthetically better for your report. I kind of like it the default way, which is all to the left. And what I was going to show you is that you can actually change backgrounds to something pretty cool. You can use some of the theme colors here. So let's try gray. No, that does not look good at all because the text is all white. So let's stick to black, or I'm not even sure what it was before. Let's go, yeah, dark gray. Okay, so that's number of purchases. Now let's do something a bit more creative. So one thing I want to show you, whenever you're creating a new scorecard, you can just press Control C or edit copy, and you can press Control V, or you can just paste it from here to creating a new scorecard here. This way, the good thing about this is that it maintains the same dimensions and color pattern if you change the colors and formatting before. So it's a quick way just to create duplicate scorecards and change these parameters here, so you can keep the styling in place. Another thing you should see is that we can actually, let's actually move it out of a line here. You can highlight these here, and you can actually arrange them horizontally like that, or you can, that's not really good. You can arrange them vertically like this, which is also not too good, but we can just drag them and drop here if you want. It's up to you when you're doing your styling, but it's fine. You can do other distribute is what I wanted to show you. You can actually do, oh no, you can't do it here, sorry, but that's okay. This is fine. So now let's create something different. Let's do total profit, and then we're going to do one that's average profit per sale. Okay, so to do this, just click on it again, and what we're going to change here is the metric. What we're going to do is going to create a new field, and this one is going to be total profit. Okay, and this is going to be simply the sum of our total profit here. Whoops. See what happens when you don't copy and paste the formulas. I mean, insert the formulas properly. So now you're going to see it's changed to sum of our total. Actually, sorry, this is not what we wanted to do. Sorry, it's supposed to be total profit. My bad. There we go. That's exactly what we wanted to see. So now you can see this is our total profit per date. Now let's do something else. As I said, let us get the average profit per sale, which is a good metric to track. However, it's a metric you may want to plot in a graph, which we will do shortly in a future lesson. However, for now, let's change this here. Let's create a field called average profit per sale, and let's AVG. Whoops, caps lock is on. Alright, and let's do, this will be profit. Actually, you know what? It will be total profits. Whoops, happened again. Okay, so we apply this, and this now gives you the average profit per sale, which is 9. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So we can see we can create some scorecards to do pretty cool things here. However, while this is actually quite informative, there are some more very useful features that we'll do in the next lesson using scorecards, which is some time comparisons. Okay, so let's get to that lesson now. Hi, and welcome back to the lesson on scorecards, and what we'll be doing now is a scorecard comparison. So this is going to be based off our total profit scorecard. What we're going to do is that we're going to do a scorecard that shows a profit for last month, and then compare it, give a little indication whether it's up or down compared to the previous month. So it's quite useful to do this, especially like in executive level dashboards, so you can get an eyeball of basically how well the company is performing compared to last month, or even last week, or even yesterday, or last year, or last quarter. So you can do quite a bit of different comparisons. So firstly, what we need to do is we need to basically create a custom range here, and we'll change the name afterward. What we're going to do though, we're going to firstly change the range, the auto date range, which was our full invoice dimension date range here. So let's change this auto date range here. Since we're going on, let's do last month. Let's do from the 1st of November to the 30th of, so first here, and we use the 30th here. Okay, so start date, end date type format for this date selection tool. And that is going to give us the profit for last month. And now we want to compare this to the profit from in October. The reason we're not using December here is because our December data set here isn't complete. Remember, we only go up to the 9th, I believe. So we will have to compare from November to October. So now let's select October 1st and go back here, and October 31st, and press apply, and there we go. So we can instantly see that our total profit is 16.7k for last month, and it's up 18% compared to the previous month. Let's now just fix this because I don't like having total profit here. Let's call this monthly profit comparison. Okay, and therefore it's now labeled correctly, and I'm just going to have to adjust the size of this because you can see font is not fitting in our scorecard. And there we go. So that's how you do these comparisons here, which are quite useful. And what's even cooler is that you can actually do this like week to week every year, because you know how trends are seasonal. Like there's always like a rise in sales coming closer to Christmas. So now let's just do a quick other change. Let's change these dates here. So our initial dates here were from November. Let's change this now to the first week in December 2018. So let's start it at Sunday, and let's end this at 8 on Saturday. Okay, and now let's put our comparison date range here to basically the Sunday of December 1st, and obviously it just tells you the end date can be earlier because we haven't changed our end date yet. We're changing our end date now, so we have this comparison here. So this is a year-to-year comparison. So let's just change name so we can make that more appropriate. This is a year to week profit comparison. Okay, you may want to explain to someone what that means. Just one of the conventions I've seen used to label this. So you can see it's down. So you can see when it's red, it's down. When it's up, it's green. So this is pretty cool. If you wanted to change any styling issues with that, you can change the colors of it here. Green and red are good standard colors to use. You can change decimal precision, and basically you can change compact numbers if you wanted. So this is it for basically scorecard comparison. I think it's actually quite useful to do this. One weakness of this in Google Data Studio is that you do have to set the dates manually. If you wanted to have like an adjustable date, you can have filter controls or date range controls here and introduce them on top and change those dates here. That was one way you can do this. What this does, if you're curious, is that it changes this date range here, this default date range here. Whoops, I messed this up. Let me fix that. All right, that's one way you can do it. However, it's not automated, so that's a weakness of Google Data Studio for now. Hopefully it's fixed in future, where basically you can always be like, if you have live data streaming into this dashboard, which you can do, by the way. You can have a lot of live data coming into this. It doesn't have to be from CSV files we export. You can actually you can even have something that actually sends CSV files to your Google Drive, and Google Data Studio will actually basically update this dashboard when you go to view mode every 15 minutes. So you can have live data streaming into here. However, you will need to change the weeks, as I said. If it's a weekly report, it's minor. You can do this maybe in about 5 minutes or less, actually much less. But it's just a little weakness you need to be aware of when you're using Google Data Studio. Thanks for this lesson, and in the next lesson we're going to start playing with some of these charts here. You can do some really cool visuals here in Google Data Studio. So stay tuned. We'll get started on some of these charts, starting with bar charts and pie charts, and then going down to a bunch of these here, including tree maps. So it's going to be an informative lesson, okay? Okay, so now we're about to start on something very cool in Google Data Studio, and that's their visual plots. So let's create a new page here at page 4, and we have a brand new clean slate here. And now let's start playing with some of the charts. Let's actually start with the bar chart first, because it's one of the simplest you can use. It's essentially the same as a histogram, what we've done in Python and Pandas, doing those plots before. We can do them easily here in Google Data Studio and actually manipulate them and change colors and visual styles, so it's quite cool. So now let's change our dimension firstly. Dimension is basically the variable you're going to be measuring the quantity of, and the quantity of is going to be on the y-axis. That's a metric here. So just remember, dimension is going to be on the x-axis, metric is going to be on the y-axis here. Okay, so now let's change this to something cool. Let's change this to quarter so we can see our quarterly profits, and obviously now we will need to change metric here to profits. All right, so let's change that. Let's change it to total profit, and there we go. So you can see now we have our quarterly profits here. We have the quarter in 2019 here. Now remember, the issue we had before is that you couldn't actually sort this properly here. So let's just try to sort it again, see if it works. So let's sort it on quarter, and let's sort this on ascending. Okay, there we go. It did sort correctly now. So now we have quarter end of 2018, quarter 4, which is quite low because we only have from December in 2018. Then we have quarter 1 2019, quarter 2 roughly the same, quarter 3 we can see it's picking up, and quarter 4, which is actually incomplete, but you can see it's actually increasing still, probably due to the Christmas rush in sales. So this is very good. At a high level, executives would love to use this to actually see their quarterly earnings, to see how the companies are progressing, because a lot of financials are done at every quarterly interim time periods. So you can do it like that. Now bar charts are quite useful and quite, as you can see, quite flexible in terms of the styling and different things you can do. So what I'm about to do here, I'm going to start doing some of the stacked bar charts here. So now that we have quarterly earnings, let's just make this bigger. And what we're about to do now is, what you can do is click here, chart bar right here. It brings down this menu, and you can change this to different formats of styles. Not all will work due to the metrics, but most of them should work. And what you can do is change this to stacked column chart here. Now what's going to happen, it's going to make no sense right now, because as you can see, let's minimize that. It's basically sorting. It has a different metric here that's being measured, and that metric now is description. Okay, so we need to change description to something else, something that can make a lot more sense. And what can make sense is country. So now you can actually see your quarterly profits per country split here. So this is actually pretty cool. All right, again, we'll have to reset the sorting here. Yeah, let's put it on ascending. Just wait for a few seconds for it to load. Okay, there we go. Now, as you can see, there's two things wrong here. All right, if you know your visual design principles, the first thing that sticks out here is that we can't actually see much differences here between the countries. That's a big no-no. So what you're going to want to do is, you're probably going to want to remove the UK from this chart and plot the UK separately. So first thing I would do here is, let's just add our filter here, no UK, what we created before. What you get is a much more visually aesthetically pleasing chart, because now it's not all these colors squished on top, and you can actually see the fluctuations in different countries a bit clearer. It's still not perfect, but it's actually a lot better, and you can see like how Australia's trends picked up here for some reason, then decreased over time. You can see that Netherlands, the green one here, the blue one here, basically kind of stayed the same for the first 3 quarters of the year, then had a big jump around the fourth quarter. So this is all pretty cool. Now what else can you do with these bar charts? Now remember I mentioned the style. You can actually play with the style quite a bit. Something I like to do is change it to horizontal like this. Sometimes it helps people better visualize it. I sort of prefer horizontal bar charts a lot, but it really depends on the type of data you're showing. This one can work either way. Actually, it's probably better to have it as vertical bar chart here. And here's something that you would have seen before. You saw it here, 100% stacked column. Now what does that mean? Now let's implement this and you'll see what it does. So exactly. So now what it does, it basically removes the metric on top here. Now it puts everything at a max of 100%. So what this does for you, it shows you it is a better way to illustrate relative change in things here. Alright, so rather than having it be a sum, because let's remove this again. Rather than have this be a sum, let's take a look at Netherlands here. Netherlands is tiny here, but what it's going to do here is when you enable 100% stacking, they all look roughly the same, but what it does here, it's basically showing you the ratio of Netherlands over everyone else at every quarter. So this is a way you can actually see relative changes in countries across quarters here using this 100% stacking tool. You can actually do other nifty things here. Let's take off 100% stacking. You can show total card, and what that does, you can actually, it doesn't show any change here, but you have to see it when you go into view mode. You can actually see all the sums here, all the totals for each one. It's quite good and quite useful if you want to get some details quickly off the chart without having to dig behind a spreadsheet somewhere. If you removed it, let me just show you how it looks. It gives you the individual score as opposed to the totals. So let's take a look and see. As you can see, it gives you the totals as you hover over it, but not for all of them in one. So it is probably better to, let's put this back, to leave show total card. It's more useful. You can also show data labels here in it. It's not always clean. As you can see, it's kind of messy at the top here when the data is a bit squished together. So you can remove it. You can color by different orders here in the charts. All right. This is very cool and very customizable in my opinion. You don't get this level of customization in some of the other business analytic dashboard software. You can change the axes here. You can reverse the axes here, left axis, and let me just keep going. What else you can do? Similar stuff on the X. You can do a lot of grid changes here. Make it darker, brighter, remove the grid entirely, change the backgrounds, change the legends if you wanted. Change to interfere with the chart header when you're hovering. So there's a lot of customizability here. I'm not going to go through all of it. I would like if you experimented on your own, because they're all relatively simple and you can just get a gauge of how it looks when you do it on your own. You don't need to be taught this. You need to experiment with this on your own, because that's how you actually learn better. Passively looking at me doing it and following me doesn't actually help you sometimes. What I find helps a lot with learning these types of software is just doing things on your own and seeing what looks best and seeing what conveys the information best. One of the things I taught in the storytelling section here is that data needs to basically tell a story and be clear when telling a story. You don't need to overcomplicate it like this. All right? A lot of people will say a nice chart like this can be too complicated. There are a few things you can do. You can probably remove some countries here from it. You can actually maybe want to do monthly plots instead so you can see changes better. There's a number of things you can do. Just remember that you need to be clear when showing data. You don't want to mislead people. You want to be explicit and you want to be simple. Okay? So that's it for this chapter. In the next section, we're going to look at time series plots here. Okay? Stay tuned. Okay, so now that you have the hang of bar charts, let's actually start plotting some line charts, which are just as simple, and we have a couple cool features that we can do with them too. So let's create a new page. I just created page 5 here, in case you weren't following. And we have a brand new clean slate for our line charts. So now let's start with the third line chart here from the odd chart diagram. That's just plainly line chart. And let's put it up here and let's drag it a bit so we have some space to work with. And I'm going to show you something here. So firstly, our dimension, which you remember dimensions are basically the x-axis metric you're going to be measuring. Let's change this to year months. And now, so we have our year months here. We may need to sort this later on by sorting it here. And now let's actually go into metric and let's do total sales. Whoops. Alright, and there we go. So actually it's quite simple. We have our total sales plotted on our line chart here. Let's change the sorting here to year month. And we'll need to change this to ascending as well. So we can have it basically like a time series here, which we'll be getting to as well, time series plots, which are very similar to this here, which we're making. Now, this is cool and simple and pretty much a bar chart, except it's a line now. It's just a different representation of basically the same data. Now let's see what else we can do with some line charts here. You may have noticed this drill down, breakdown dimension. Now what this does, let's add our breakdown dimension to be, let's say, country. And what's going to happen now in our plot, you're going to see all the countries here plotted separately. It's a way to break down, essentially why it's called breakdown, the total sales from each one. Now you can see a big problem here is that the UK, because it's a UK based store, is dominating this entire thing. So let's add our no UK filter, go down to filter here and add filter and enable no UK. So we can actually create a separate line chart for UK afterward if you wanted. Let's just create this one and see how it looks. So this is pretty cool. So you can actually see we have a very cool line chart here. Now there's some things here you should know. It doesn't actually break these charts here for some reason. I'm not sure why. Let's take a look and see. What could be happening here is maybe they're missing data for a couple months here in some of them here that weren't showing up in quarters but show up in line charts. So again, this is not the best line chart. It's a tad messy. However, it illustrates the point we're trying to show. Now let's take a look at some of the other things you can do with some line charts here. So let's look at this, sorry, not styles. Let's go back to data. Let's look at the different types of line charts here. You can actually change this to a smoothed line chart here, which to be honest is not needed here because our data points are so far apart. Smoothed data could is commonly used when you have a lot more points on the x-axis here to smoothen out any jaggedness in it. Let's put it back here. Now what I'm going to explore here is, let's take a look at this one. This is the combo chart here. So right now it looks like a bar chart, but yet it's a line chart, right? So what's going on here? So now what's happening here is that it allows us to measure two metrics here, a line on a line chart using bars as well, or you can put both at the same time. So let's actually put total sales here in it. And what you're going to see is that you're going to see lines over the bars here, which isn't terribly useful because you could have gotten the information anyway. It's just visually a bit more pleasing in my opinion here. Let's just fix our sorting as well, so it's chronologically left to right. And basically what else can we do? We can actually add any metric you want, I should say. So now let's change this to total profit, okay? So you can actually see total sales plotted with total profit here. So this is a pretty cool chart. However, again, it doesn't tell you too much, but it's basically a nice chart to show you how much your profit and sales are relative here. You can see it's pretty much always close to 50%, although sometimes here it's a bit, total sales and total profit is actually quite high. Sometimes it's a bit low relatively, like in this one. As you can see, total sales were higher, but profits didn't increase much. So it is actually a useful chart in that sense, okay? Now let's take a look at what else you can do here with line charts. You can do this one here, which is a stacked combo chart, which allows you to add another dimension here on this here. And by default, it picked quantity, which is actually not a bad one to plot here. What I would probably want to do is probably create a field and put number of sales, and we can do a count distinct, whoops, on the invoice number. Whoops, it's not auto-completing as I expected. Happened again. Just click it. What is going on here? Sorry guys. Yeah, just gonna type it in. It's probably something is messy with the resolution when I change the screen. Jeez, this is quite annoying, but okay, there we go. It's fixed. Apologies for that. And let's apply this. So now you can see, although there is a problem here in that everything is so small, you can't tell what's happening. So quantity might have actually just been a better one to work with, although quantity just gives you a rough count of all the items, all the individual lines in the invoice, so it's not terribly useful as well. But you can see how you can use this to actually represent a lot of informative data here. This is actually quite useful in a lot of presentations where you want to just show a lot of useful information in one graphic. So you can try to combine different things with lines and different stack charts here. And again, if you want to go to style, there's a number of different styling options you can do here. Let me just shift this back. You can scroll on, you can change colors, axes, backgrounds, grids. You can change it to a log scale if you need it, although it doesn't really do anything here, I believe. By the way, log scales are used when you have actually data that actually it has a lot of changes in the quantity here. You want to basically use a log scale to squash it a bit, and so basically it can actually represent it better relatively on a graph. So again, you can see this. Cumulative is quite useful actually. What cumulative here does, it actually shows you the sales over time. That's actually going to be our next lesson here. We're going to do cumulative comparisons with line charts here. So that's actually our next lesson, so stay tuned. Okay, so now you've gotten a good hang of line charts here. Now let's do some time series plots. So let's create a new page 6 here. So we have some space to work with, and now let's add the first time series plot here. So the first thing you're going to notice here is that a time series plot automatically grabs the dimension here as the invoice date here, which is exactly what we wanted. And now let's add a metric here. Let's add total sales to it here. And here we go. So we have a time series automatically sorted from the oldest on the left to the newest on the right, like how we want it. However, there's two things you should note here. One, why does it seem like it has periodic dips all the time, and it's usually the same distance? Well, that's actually simple. That's because this is a store, and these were probably Sundays or weekends where the store was closed or didn't ship out or didn't process orders. So what we can do here, you can go into Style, and what you can do is you can go down here to General. You can see missing data here, and you see line to 0. That's what happens when there's a missing data gap here. So you can change it to line breaks, which looks kind of bad in my opinion, but it's okay. Depends on what you want to show. And my preference here is linear interpolation. So you can actually see every time there's a gap, it just joins it sideways here from points, and you can actually add some smoothing factor to it here. It's not necessary as well. The smoothing factor actually just increases, adds a 0 here, pushes this up for some reason. It didn't need to. And you can see there's a lot of the same styling options that we saw before. There's something I want to show you here. So now let's create a new line chart. Actually, let's keep this one here so you guys have it. Let's Control C, copy it, and paste it here. So we've just pasted our line chart here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a cumulative plot. And what a cumulative plot is that it actually keeps summing up continuously. So every month, every day, it keeps adding data to it continuously. So how is this useful? How can we even use this? So what we can do here, we can add a comparison metric here. So let's assume you want to compare the first 7 days in December in 2018 to the first 7 days in December in 2019. So let's do this here. Which one is this? Whoops. Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, let's go back to comparison. So the auto date range is our date range we're going to show in blue, and the comparison date range is the one we're going to show in 2018. So let's go back to 2018 December 1st, and let's go back to it here, and let's end it at, say, let's go to the 8th, so Saturday to Saturday almost, okay? And now let's change our current date range here from December 1st, let's do December 1st here to the 8th as well. So it's 8 here to the 8th here. Not exactly a totally fair comparison, but it's the same date period of the last month, of the December month I should say. So now what you're going to see here is this very cool plot that actually shows you how it compares to the exact time last year cumulatively. So you can see we're slightly ahead of where we were last year in total sales. Now let's see if this extends to profit, which is what a business would be wanting to optimize, not just total sales. So let's find total profit here, and let's see how we compare to last year. So, okay, so it's roughly the same, not much difference, so that's good. I mean, so our profit margins are correlating well to sales here. It's not a huge difference. So this is a very useful plot in my opinion. You can do monthly comparisons every month with this as well, or compare to the last month. So you can go like, you can compare November to October, the previous month. So line charts are actually quite useful, and as you can show you here, you can do sparkline line charts. Actually, that wouldn't change anything, sorry. Actually, let's undo that, and let's change it in this one, sorry. So you can see what happened here is just like a fancy grid here. It's basically a styling format here. The data is exactly the same. It just didn't do much. You can do a smoothed one here, which is what we were changing in the options as well. So as you can see, Google didn't need to put these options here. We can also change it in the styling area here. It's just sometimes convenient if you know exactly what you want to add. Okay, so that's it for time series plots. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope you can actually just play with this on your own like the others I advise as well, just to get a hang of it and see what cool features and options you can do, and play with styling as well. Thank you. Alright, so now we're moving on to some simpler charts, which I'll combine into one lesson, which will be pie charts and tree maps, which are basically almost the same thing, just different ways to illustrate the same data. So now let's add a pie chart here. And now let's quickly add a donut chart, which is almost the same thing, it's just slightly different. And now let's add a tree map diagram here. So we're going to take a look at all three at the same time, just plotting different things on it. So with the pie chart, let's put our customer. Let's see in proportion who our best customers were, and let's look at total profit. It's just, sorry, my internet is a bit finicky. There we go. So total profit here, and it's going to update shortly. There we go. So now you can see these are customer IDs here. You can see actually quite a bit of this overall profits came from customer 1812. Now if you wanted to actually see who this customer was, you can go, see how much percent he was allocated or attributed to him. Just go to view, and you can actually see it here when you hover over it. You can see $5,500 or pounds, whatever, he was responsible for in profit, and you can actually see each one. And then what is cool here is that it doesn't try to plot every single customer on the plot. It groups all the remainders. So once something is too small, it just groups them together and be like, okay, the others, which are 81% of them, are this. So what this tells us though, quickly from this bar chart here, is that we have 10 roughly customers here that account for 20, almost say 19 or 18%, 18.5% of our sales. So that's pretty cool. And you can do it similarly here with a donut. So now instead of putting customer ID, let's just try a different metric here. Let's try country. Oh, whoops, I changed the metric. That is actually, that's correct. And let's change this to profit again. Oh, let's try total sales just to be a little different. And there we go. So we have this here as well. So this again is pretty cool. And now what about tree maps? Oh, I've used tree maps before in many other cases, but not for just data like this. However, it can be used, so let's actually put a tree map here to represent the exact thing we just showed there with country, and our metric is going to be total sales. Now it's going to be a bit wonky here because UK is going to dominate this, so what I would advise you do is actually add a filter here, no UK, so you can actually see proportionally how your international sales break down. So just another way of visualizing this here. This is actually quite cool. Sometimes you can actually get a nice breakdown over how everybody ordered. You can see it basically in these squares. So how this works is that the one with the biggest area here is responsible for the largest number of total sales, total profit. I forgot what we were measuring, total sales here. So that's it for these three basic plots. If you want to just start messing with them here, I just wait for this to load. It's a bit sticky. There we go. You can go to styling and you can change the number of slices you want. You can change whether it's slice order, single color, those different metrics. You can change labels, backgrounds. You can do the same with pie charts, almost exactly the same styling issues. Again, similarly to this, tree maps have a bit variation here. You can change different colors, mid values for the gradients here. So this is all quite cool and quite useful to illustrate basically proportionality with respect to different categories of data here. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson here, and stay tuned, we're going to go on to some geographic plots next. Okay, so now we're going to move on to scatter plots. So now let's create a new page again, page 8. Just in case you're wondering, page 8 you kind of have to scroll down to see it, otherwise it's going to look like it's only up to page 7. Okay, so let's create a new slate here, and we're going to do a simple scatter plot here. So just follow along and I'll tell you why we're doing this scatter plot as we proceed. So you can see now, scatter plot, you have two dimensions here, one on the y-axis, one on the x-axis, and you're just going to plot the points here. So what we're going to do a scatter plot to see if our profit ratio, profit ratio is a measure of the unit price over the sale price, and we're going to see if there's a correlation between the cost of the item and profit ratio. So firstly, let's create this new field that we're just talking about called profit ratio. Okay, and as I said, profit ratio here is the unit price, let's find it, divided by our sale price. So as you can see, we don't have actual sale price here, so it's going to be quite simply unit price plus the profit of that item. So that's going to give us our profit ratio. Let's fix this error here. It's happening quite often, sorry about that, guys. Anyway, so this is the formula we're going to use here. Just type it in or copy and paste it from, well, you wouldn't have somewhere to copy and paste it from, so just type it in if you're following along, and that's going to be our profit ratio. So what we can do here, you can save this, all right, and now go back to all fields here. There's something I just want to change quickly. This isn't a number per se, it is numeric, but it's also a percentage. So we're going to have it as a percentage instead of a number here, and once that's done, just press done here. So let's put profit ratio on our x-axis here. So let's find it, profit ratio, and on our y-axis now, let's put the unit price. So now you can actually see it's not totally explicit here, and there's a big jump over here in this data. So if you wanted, you can probably remove this data from here by manually going into your data set and changing it. You can definitely see that basically the unit price, as unit price goes up though, you can see profit ratio tends to increase. That's why it is sort of like a general trend line here in this direction. Okay, so let's see what else we can do with scatter charts. All right, you may have noticed that there was a scatter chart here called a bubble chart, and bubble charts are actually pretty cool. So let's change this to a bubble chart here, and you can see there are different sizes of bubbles here. So what does that tell us? Bubble size is basically correlates to another variable, so you can now add a third dimension to this chart. So if you wanted to see what quantity is actually kind of useful. Quantity, you can actually see how much of an item is being sold. You can probably put it on anything else you wanted. However, let's leave it on quantity for now, and you can actually see that this item here sold quite a bit. So what you can notice though, what you may notice is that bubbles are basically making it hard to see over here. So you can shrink the size of the bubbles so you have a smaller relative scale. You can increase the number of bubbles if you wanted. You can change the bubble color. I don't recommend doing this to stock code, but just let's see how it looks. You can go back to none. You can color by different things. You can add a trend line, you can add a linear trend line, and you'll see a line like this. It's going to show up here. You can switch the axes. You can do a log scale. Let's see how it looks with a log scale. It's had more informative, but it's still a bit confusing, so let's remove it. Okay, so you can do quite a number of different things here. So I encourage you to experiment with them and play with your own scatter plots here. Scatter bubble is one of my favorite plots because you can add a lot of informative information here onto it. This data set, it's not terribly informative to add bubble plots to it, but maybe you can come up with some cool things. Maybe this can be country, this can be probably like total sales, total price, that sort of stuff. So you can just take a look and experiment, play with some different charts and make your own deductions, and feel free to share it with the rest of the class if you come up with something pretty cool. Okay, thank you. So one of the really cool features you can do with Google Data Studio is geographic plots, and there's a whole range of different types of geographic plots you can do. Let's add one here. We're going to do the world map one. However, just to let you know, there's a bunch of different things you can do with US states. You can do continents, you can do different regions. There's a number of things. So initially, our data is going to come up like this because we don't have any geographic information tied to this here. And the reason for that is because we didn't actually change country here to a geo region. Okay, so as you can see is what I told you, there's a number of different geographic codes you can do, including latitude and longitude if you just have points that you can use to plot here. Continent code, you can do region codes, city codes. So it's a lot. It's not all, because I was trying to actually create some plots for this course and it was a bit difficult. There were some election maps and they didn't have those geographic dimensions here. Nevertheless though, it's still quite useful and quite cool. You can do a lot. So as you can see, invalid dimension, but however, as you can see now, country comes up here. Just in case I didn't do it before, I didn't show you, but country was not coming up here before because it wasn't a country data type like we changed it to just now. So let's change it here and you're going to see something magical. There we go. Very cool. We have our country map here. Let's just make it large and you can see different color codes here corresponding to something, and that something is record count. Let's change record count to something like total profit, something quite informative, and it's going to take about 5-10 seconds to update, and there we go. So you can see two problems with this map. One, you wouldn't know unless you looked at the data set, but the first one you can see is because UK again has significantly more purchases than every other country. There's no scale here to represent the other countries. They're all on the low end here. So what we can do is just create a filter. Actually, we're going to have to create our new filter here. Sorry, we don't have to create it, just add our filter here, sorry. And there we go. So UK is removed, and now you can actually see that France and Germany, and to a lesser extent Australia, are the dominant countries that purchase from our store. So this is quite cool. What else can we do with this though? All right. As I said, you can do total profit and all those things. There's another issue I told you guys about. You may have noticed that Ireland, which is a separate country, is not showing up here. And the reason for that is because they don't have Ireland explicitly on our dataset. What they have is an abbreviation for it, which is EITR, I believe. I'm not even sure, but I have it. EIRE. Sorry. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to edit our field, our country field data. Actually, no. So we're going to create a new field. All right. Let's call it countries instead of country. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the text that's representing Ireland. That's EIRE. And we're going to change it to Ireland, so Ireland gets picked up in our map. So to do this, we're going to use regex here. So we're going to use reg, okay, and you can see it actually comes up here already. Replace, whoops, okay, and we're going to do a field we're going to change is country, and what we're going to look for is EIRE, and we're going to change that to Ireland, and it's going to tick green. Yep, there we go. So we created our new country field here, and let's just make sure it's not. So let's change it to a geographic country field here. Now I've noticed that Google Data Studio automatically, you don't have to do this part, but it's good practice too, because if you just added it in the field here, it would change automatically. So now let's take a look at Ireland. Okay. Now, what you can do, you can zoom here. So let's zoom into Europe, so you can actually see the change in Ireland better. So what we're going to do, we're going to replace country with countries. So Ireland is right here, by the way, in case you guys don't know. So we're going to change this variable country, replace with countries, where we have Ireland correctly labeled because the country spelling was wrong. And let's see what happens. There we go. So Ireland changed here. So this is very cool. So now you can see it's Ireland, Netherlands, which we weren't picking up before because the zoom was too far, Germany, then France, and then this is, I guess, Cyprus or something. I'm not entirely sure. So this is awesome. So you can see how you can create some very cool geographic plots now using Google Data Studio. And there's a number of data sets online that you can visualize, and you can do some really, really cool things. You can change the styling to a lot of different types of things too. You can do different color options, fonts, backgrounds. Let's scroll down, sticking a bit. Just some labels as well, but actually it's not as much as I anticipated. I have seen this before, guys. Just initially I sometimes there's a lot of changes Google makes almost every day, every week on Google Data Studio. Last time I looked at this, honestly, it looked like more changes. However, maybe they just reducing it slightly for some reason. Don't hold that against me. They may add some more geographic tweaks and visualization changes later on. However, what you have there is actually quite cool. There's only one type of geographic plot here, but it's very customizable as well. And you can, as I said, you can add a number of different metrics, zoom in different things. You can change the date ranges. You can actually have a filter on top here that can actually change dates, different years as well. So this is quite cool. Okay. In case you guys don't know how to use filters, I'm not sure if I taught it before in the previous lessons here, but you can have a filter here, and you can change this to, let's change this to year, month, I guess. Actually, let's change it to quarter. Okay. So now you can actually, now as it loads there, when you go to view, you can actually change this to, it's now sticky. Yeah, here we go. So it's a bit sticky. So you can change this, you can remove this one here, and you can just look at the first quarter in 2019 as it refreshes here. Give it some time. You can see different metrics here. So it's roughly the same. It's probably going to be similar geographic patterns internationally every quarter, but you never know. If you want to show it different quarters for every map, you can actually have consecutive maps here and have different time filters on them. So if you want to see different changes, so that's all pretty cool. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll be very glad if you did. Feel free to ask me any questions on the student forum about these plots and what else is, if there's anything you want to do, I'll help you do it as well. Thanks. Okay, so you've learned pretty much all of the basics in Google Data Studio, and the things we haven't really touched on are things that are relatively minor. It's bullet graphs and basically some area plots here. Area plots are essentially the same as line plots, however, you have the shaded area below the different lines here, as you can see it illustrated here. Sometimes it's better to use these things when you want to illustrate sort of like how large a line is compared to the other line. It's just a visual difference mostly. Bullet graphs, or bullet plots I should call it. Let's just put one here. Actually, we should probably put it on the next page since we're running out of space here, but for now I'll just move this aside and let's put our bullet here. I'm just going to show you what it does. We're not actually going to create one here because it doesn't really lend itself to this data set here. However, what bullet plots do is, let's say you want to let's do total sales, yeah, and you get a sum of it here because sum is a default aggregation for a lot of numbers here, and you can see basically just a blue line here. What does that blue line tell us? Well, basically that blue line is telling us that it's just basically a single bar here. You can see when you go to view, you can see what the bar represents, 272,000. So what we need to do now is just change our ranges here. I can put this at 300,000. Oh, whoops, it doesn't even allow us to do that. So let's just change this to an average instead. And let's make this, actually it was working before, my bad. Alright, there we go. Sorry about the silence, I was just testing out something. So as you can see, average sale, this is basically our average sale per invoice, is this range here. And what you can do, you can set little interim parameters, or interim guides here. So this can be 10, this could be 20, and this could be 30. Let's put it at 30 here, alright? And what you can do, this is basically a way just to measure like how far are you from a target. So you can have a target being, say, 20. And you can see, oh, let's actually put a target type thing, so it's 25. So you can actually say that this is how far we are from our target here. And what you can do, you can probably just change this to a custom date range. So it's a way, if we have like data being updated every day in our report, or every 15 minutes even, you can actually have like a tracker that tells you how far are you from your target. So it's a good visual to use. As I said, it's not terribly useful for this plot. It's only because we don't really have the type of data set here to lend itself properly to it, but we've sort of made an interim, sort of like a ratch here for it. So that's what blended plots are about. Like I said, what area plots are useful for is just when you want to see the difference in lines a bit, so you can actually have them here. It is useful when you have like maybe 3 or 4 lines, and you can still do the 100% stack chart just like we did here. Okay. And the other thing we didn't touch on much was basically, let me just get the next plot here, is blended data. And what blended data is, it's basically if you wanted to add a second data set and use it in here. So first time you click it, it's going to have a Google tutorial video that tells you how it works. It's basically a pretty short video, and we can just watch this here. Okay. You see how they click on adding the data before, and then this comes up, and then this you can actually just watch the video. It's fine. I'll explain mine after, and then you save. Okay, so that's it there. Let me just show you, because this is actually not the best video in my opinion, but it's okay. Get started. Let me show you what's happening here. Okay, so this is what I was trying to show you, but it went over it a bit too quick. You have something called add another data source, and unfortunately we don't have another data source except the data source we used here. But let's just assume we added our data source here. You can see there's something called join keys and invalid dimension. So forget what invalid dimension is for now. We can just remove that here, and it's going to be missing, but that's okay because we can actually add it back here. But what's happening here is that when you have a second data source here, you want to have a metric that is similar, so that you can actually, as the same I should say, so you can actually match the data across spreadsheets or across sheets. So in this case, customer ID is a very good metric to match on, and then you can pull the available fields in it, and it basically can actually configure dimensions and filters here if you wanted, and date ranges here. All quite convenient. I wish I could actually have a proper one to show you guys. I'll probably manipulate this data set and record one a bit while after if you guys request it. And you can add multiple data sources here, so you can have many different data sources here, so you can actually add many different metrics here. So I'm just going to close this and discard these changes since we don't want these things added here. Okay, so now you've basically seen pretty much all the major features of Google Data Studio. So what else can we do? Well, there's 2 things I'm going to leave you with here. Second to last concluding lesson here is basically a simple one, and it's how you share this file. So the first thing you need to look at here is that there's a share button right on top staring at us for all these last few lessons that we never used before. So let's take a look and see what it does. So when you click share here, you can definitely add different people here according to how you want to do it. So you can just add the names here, emails of the people you want to do, or if they're in your Google email directory, they'll come up, the names will just come up here with addresses, with the email addresses. And you can basically do these 2 things, and this is important now. If you want to have people who can only view the report and not edit, always click can view, which is on by default. If for some reason you're collaborating with a couple other analysts or other people who have inputs into this, you may want to just have them as give them edit control over the report. And as well, you can do some more in-depth management here. So you can do some things like link sharing on or off. Okay, you can basically have it, if it's off you can't change it here, but if you have it on, like let's say anyone internet can view, it tells you it's on. All right, and this is basically some different controls you can have here as well. And this is a link you can use to share it with people. You can do these 2 things to disable downloading or printing. You can prevent editors from changing access and adding new people as well. So you have some very good control over how you share this report with different people in your organization or outside of it using Google. Google is basically, if you're familiar with Gmail and Google Drive stuff, this is should be all very familiar to you. Okay, so let's close this for now and let's see something else here. So the final little thing I want to show you here before we go on to our final project is that when you're in view mode, I just want to show you there's something called refresh data here, and you can also copy reports, make it full screen, share as well from here, and you can switch products to other Google's marketing tools here as well. However, the one I wanted to show you guys was refresh. Now refresh doesn't do anything in our data at all, alright, but refresh could be an important tool in your Armory if you're doing, it's important to actually have auto refresh on if you have live data streaming here. It all depends actually if you want to have it on or off actually, but it's something you should note because there's a way you can actually do. Let's actually take a look at this here. All right, so we're going back to our default Google Data Studio thing here, initial screen, nothing. And let's create a report here. And what I want to show you something here. Whoops, not a report, my bad. It is create a data source. Okay. So when you're creating data sources here, we pulled from a static CSV sheet here. However, you can pull from a number of different Google tools here, like Google Ads, Google Analytics, tons of these other things here, SQL, Postgres, all done by Google, YouTube Analytics, so many different things here. And as you know, let's say you probably have Google Analytics on your website, a company website, Google Ads. You know these things update quite frequently. So having the ability to refresh data in your report is quite useful. So let's just select Google Analytics here, okay? If you authorize it here, now I don't have any Google Analytics tied to this account, unfortunately, okay? I don't get to see this, the toolbar up here, but you may, I think it did come up in this one. Now let's see if it does. I wanted to show you that there's a way you can actually set these things to auto refresh every 50 minutes. It doesn't look like it's on here. It looks like Google may have turned it off. Nevertheless, when you're doing reports like Google Ads and Google Analytics, there is a way you can set your report to auto refresh when creating data source here into your report. Okay, so feel free to play with all the features in Google Data Studio. It's quite a fun tool to use. I had a lot of fun making this tutorial actually because I was not an expert on it. Actually, I've been using Power BI quite a bit previously. I just touched on Google Data Studio and I realized actually it is quite good for a free tool. Power BI is better in some ways. It's a bit faster and there's a bit more flexibility in creating some of the charts. However, you can do almost everything you can do in Power BI, you can do in Google Data Studio. And what I'm very impressed about is that Google Data Studio is updating their features so much. It didn't take me too long to make this tutorial, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks. Part-time, by the way, so it wasn't a full-time endeavor. And in those 2 or 3 weeks time, I actually did see some changes already taking place on the tool. So Google is constantly updating and improving this tool, which is great for us, and it's at a state right now where it's usable in pretty much any organization to create some very cool dashboards. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and the last chapter, which you'll see now, is basically a project for you guys. It's not a project I'm going to do for you guys. It's a project where I'm just going to show you the final output, and as a homework lesson or a practice tutorial for you guys, I want you guys to do it on your own. It doesn't make sense to me messing with Google Data Studio just by following someone like my videos without actually doing it yourself. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a finished dashboard in the next section, and you guys are going to recreate it. Okay, thank you. And this is a late addition to this tutorial video. One thing I missed out when I was talking about sharing is that you can share from the file here. However, what I wanted to show you was that you can also download these reports as a PDF here. So if you wanted just to download it, say just to select page, let's see, what page are we on? Page 9. You can download it here. It's preparing the PDF here, and pretty shortly it's going to actually finish creating this PDF. And you can actually use this to share amongst different people in your organization as well. Okay, so there we go. So let's open this. Alright, so this is actually pretty cool. It's nice high quality PDF here. Unfortunately, the filters are not going to work in a PDF, so you may want to just remove them when you're sharing these to people who think PDFs can be interactive like this. They can't, at least not to this extent. But yeah, so it's cool. You got a high quality PDF here with your reports. So that's pretty cool. So that's it for this lesson. Okay, thank you. Okay, so here, as promised, here is our simple, relatively simple executive sales dashboard that I created. All right, now it's not perfect. It's actually something I did pretty quickly here. However, what I want you guys to do is take a look at this here. I'm just going to leave it. What you can do, since it can fit on all one screen, just take a look at it here. Maybe pause the video if you want, or take a screenshot if you insist. What I can do is actually I can create a screenshot and append it into the resources section of this chapter, which I will do. So you can take a look at this here, and basically what I want you to do as a project is maybe spend about a half hour or less, if you're good, recreating this dashboard here, and basically, or if you want, even adding or creating cooler dashboards as well. Okay, so this is my high-level executive dashboard. Gives you how much numbers we got this week versus last week, our profit weekly comparison. You don't have to match up the figures exactly, because I may have used, like, you can use different dates if you want, just as long as it's working. It's not like an actual school project, just it's a project to get you used to doing your own thing in Google Data Studio, so you can create some very cool visualizations like this. You can have unique customers per month, unique customers per week. You can have profit month comparison. This is a comparison every month. It has the same name here, but it's probably done for a different month here as well. Actually, this one was done yearly. This is the profit month comparison per year. Should have actually labeled this correctly. I will label it correctly when I give you guys the image of this dashboard, or the PDF. Actually, PDF is going to be better. Number of orders of all time, profit. This is of all time. I'll label these things correctly for you guys. Cumulative month-to-month comparison. You can see the dates here. Profit comparison to last year for the same period in December. Quarterly sales, all of this stuff. Okay, so this is what I want you guys to do and build for me.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.